What a load of bunkers, what a load of balls, what an Olympisstake, what a shame. It's a funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old Olympic game. 1 ring for the football pitch, 2 rings for the track, 3 rings for the swimming pool, 4 rings for your call is not important. Leave a message, we won't try to call you back. 5 rings for we're sorry but the council isn't in. Due to cuts in staffing, due to major overspending, sending billions in budgets into never-ending spin. If your name's not down in gold, you better take this on the chin. We'll box you in a corner, but won't let you near the ring. Ring, 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 ring.
I first found out about the possibility of the Olympics coming to London in March 2000. An outfit called the Stephen Lawrence Partnership turned up, and it was just before April Fool's Day, and they said they'd come up with a great idea for holding the Olympics in London, in Stratford, based around the teardrop, which is the railway lines which form a teardrop shape, and the former railway lands in the middle of that. The chair of the partnership, Conor Macaulay, who was the deputy leader of Newham Council at the time, laughed so hard that you could actually hear the windows shake, and we actually thought it was an April Fool's joke.
I remember as a kid watching the Moscow Olympics on TV. One of my earliest memories of watching sport on TV, and that motivated me to run. When I was a kid, I could see Olympic athletes training because there were Olympic athletes in my club. That was very inspirational. I hope we'll see the same effect with the London 2012 Games. We've been based in beautiful Epping Forest for 100 years. We've got about 600 members, half of whom are under 20. About 3 years ago, an official from the corporation came to us and said, we put in a bid to the National Lottery to turn the rooms you use and the club and the coach house next to it into a visitor centre for the Elizabethan Hunting Lodge. It was made it very clear that actually there was no space for us at all. 2011 is our centenary, so this all happened about 2.5, 3 years before our centenary. So we must have originally gone to them 100 years ago and asked to rent the room. And since that initial stage, we've worked very hard with Corporation London. They've been very helpful in terms of finding us an alternative site, and they are leasing us an alternative site about half a mile away. We've been sharing a ground with the cricket club for it'll be about 18 months. It's been hard to deliver training from there, and we've had to make some compromises. Yes, it's been hard. It's also, we spent a lot of time and work focusing on fundraising and building a new clubhouse rather than focusing on developing and coaching our young athletes. So it's been a distraction. Yes, that's not ideal. We would have obviously liked to stay where we were for the centenary, but you can't always get what you'd like in life.
It's a funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old Olympic game.
When Ove Arup produced a report into a feasibility study, if you like, for the Department of Culture, Media and Sports, they more or less laughed the idea out of court and weren't very impressed with Ove Arup's assessment. And we thought we'd heard the last of it, but of course behind the scenes Ken Livingstone had decided this was going to be, you know, his answer to the dome or whatever, and took it on as a pet project. My reaction was one of, I suppose, half horror and half not really thinking that anything serious was likely to come out of it because it was just so incredibly far-fetched.
Sorry, but the football pitch has turned into a car park, and the golf course is a campsite, so your handicap's in respite. Unless you're near a medal, there's a pool about 10 miles away. Despite your wish to pedal, you can't cycle on this track today. If your name's not down in gold, you'd better take this on the chin. We'll box you in a corner, but won't let you near the ring. Ring, 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 ring.
I don't think I was quite swept away with the euphoria. The very initial thought was, wow, how wonderful. London is a brilliant city. How lovely to be able to showcase it to other people. Kind of generate jobs, and maybe some of our slightly run-down infrastructure might get a bit of a boost. So really looking forward to some opportunities for people to do some smart thinking around our urban fabric and what might be upgraded or improved. From an environmental and climate change perspective, I'm quite concerned around these big events like the Olympics, simply because they generate huge amounts of air travel, huge amounts of additional carbon emissions. It's great to see these kind of events, but I do have, some environmental concerns about us continuing to live and stretch the planet way beyond what it's able to support. I feel has had quite a negative impact on the borough so far. I don't know what the legacy will be like, although it doesn't look too promising. I guess what I see is the severance in terms of the Olympic site, the site that's been taken over, the impact in terms of traffic, in terms of bridges, in terms of works. Being a cyclist and having gone down there a lot, I've noticed that the facilities may be great in a few years' time, although I don't think they will be. What I do notice is the construction, the disruption from that is really quite immense, and it's certainly not geared around pedestrians or people on bikes. It's geared for lorries and motor traffic, and that I think is a huge shame because it's really disrupting the area, particularly around South Leighton, where it's obviously got its own challenges. This is really adding to it in a major way. It's not clear to me yet exactly the sort of cycle access cyclists will have to it. For example, in the Olympics itself, my understanding is we won't be able to cycle around the site. We'll have to park our bikes outside and walk in. Really, I think we could have done better than that. My fear is the legacy from the Olympics will be nothing like as originally envisaged. It won't be so strong, won't be so positive, won't be so vibrant. It won't be about local communities thriving. It will be about business, about open space being eaten up. Inside, amazing stuff. On the periphery, just on the edge, loads of chaos. So, say the road network's completely stuffed. Beyond that, beyond the immediate periphery, virtually nothing, I think, for the community, and that's what's been so hugely disappointing. So much potential really just seems to have disappeared into thin air.
What a load of bunkers, what a load of balls, what an Olympisstake, what a shame. It's a funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old Olympic game.
I thought the site was so huge that they'd be able to accommodate all the services, all of the needs within that site. So I'm very, very disappointed to see that there seems to be a lot of overspill in terms of servicing. There's the Drapers Fields, there's the Wanstead flats being used for the police, there's the area, there's the golf course now, which is going to be appropriated for camping. I mean, where's it all going to stop? There's a public right-of-way that goes through that. What they're doing to our landscape is indefensible.
The pressure on open space for development, building, particularly residential, is absolutely so intense now that the whole legacy promise is predicated on a lie. There were so many projects that were going on, so many people who were working already to regenerate the area in all sorts of ways, not just Newham and Waltham Forest, but the Wick regeneration area, for instance, in Hackney, who were really beginning to make progress, and all of a sudden everything everyone was doing was just thrown into complete disarray. No one was able to plan, businesses weren't able to take on new work or became unable to guarantee fulfilment of contracts they'd already taken on, particularly large firms, Goddard and Gibbs probably being the largest to go under. There was the threat of relocation, no one knew what was going to happen. Whole communities were being moved, the traveller community at Waterden Crescent, the Gypsy community at Clays Lane, the community in the housing co-op at Clays Lane, which consisted of vulnerable adults who had formed an excellent housing co-op that had been there for quite a long time and were a very strong community that engaged with each other and helped each other. And all of these people who were among the most vulnerable and the poorest in society were the ones who were being shat on from a height. There was also the loss of a huge amount of land, which at that time was open for recreation. A lot of it was covenanted land, a lot had been Lammas lands, and had been given to the people registered as common land for free enjoyment and recreation. There were free-to-use sports facilities like the sports hall and football pitches at Major Road, the Bully Point cycle circuit. All of these free-to-use areas were just taken. And we lost lots of sports facilities, and particularly entry-level sports facilities. You know, what's being built there now is only going to be used by professionals and top-flight teams, and it's going to be expensive to even go and watch. You're never going to use them. You're never going to play football at Wembley.
I do know that, for example, the pool and track, which is probably the best facility we've got in the borough, has been under threat for many, many years. There's always talk about replacing it with a new facility. I don't see that happening. At the same time, it's earmarked for closure and being replaced with something else, and my fear is that it will be closed down and we won't get anything in its place. We hear from our colleagues over in Redbridge that places like Seven Kings Pool was shut down without much notice, and I know in Redbridge they've got probably they've got a number of school pools that they've been relying on, which are closing down for various reasons, or at least they supposedly refurbish, but whether they'll ever open up again. I don't personally know of any new pools that are being built in the Olympic boroughs, except for the Olympic facilities themselves.
It's a funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old Olympic game.
The main facilities themselves, I would actually hope that they were not used as a public pools that anybody can turn up and swim in, because I think they are going to be really exceptionally good international standard training facilities, and we need facilities like that in this country. We need 50-metre pools, we need good training for our elite athletes, and I would hope that the aquatic centre is used for those purposes, for the competitive swimmers, and not mainly but for leisure swimmers. I think that we need other pools building that would build on the enthusiasm we set up as part of the Olympics, so that people can participate at a lower level. If you look at the number of people that are supposed to be moving into the Olympic Park area, or the housing that is being built in the Olympic Park area, we would need additional pools. If we don't build additional pools, we're going to be in a worse position than we are today because of the increased population in the area. I'm seeing very little trickle down from the Olympics in this area. Possibly the opposite way round, that some of the facilities, the money that may have been spent on facilities in this area have been channeled towards the Olympic site per se, rather than grassroots provision.
The loss to the community in all sorts of ways, jobs and houses and recreational facilities, was just enormous. And anything that we might get out of it is supposed to come through promises in the legacy period, in other words, after the Games end, and that's all predicated on the Games making a profit, which is very unlikely because they don't. I don't think anyone's going to make any money or benefit out of the Olympics, really. The sponsors will possibly do quite well out of it, the so-called Olympic family, the people who have the sponsorship rights, the advertising rights, the franchises, the monopolies on what you can do, what you can advertise, what you can sell. I don't think local people are going to get anything out of it at all.
What a load of balls! What an Olympisstake! What a shame! It's a funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old Olympic game.
Big grounds not only included the area where we're standing now with the running track and this central grass area, but over the back here, where there's now houses, that was also part of the grounds. There were tennis courts, rugby pitches, hockey pitches, soccer pitch, grass cricket wicket, and then also in this other direction outside the grounds, there's an elevated area we call the plateau. It was wartime debris that had been deposited there. But that's also housed 3 football pitches.
It's a funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old Olympic game.
Much was said, little, in fact nothing, was done. All I can see for grassroots sports is loss of opportunity. No doubt there are terrific facilities being built. I've paid one visit to the Olympic site, and they are most impressive facilities. But access, who is actually going to be able to use them in the future? How much will they cost? But what have we lost? I mean, Hackney Marshes, part of which is Leighton, huge number of football pitches there have been lost.
We want gold medals to be won. We want people to be safe at the Olympic track and get to and from all the event destinations. But second, we want a prime set of sites for projects and sport in the community, i.e. a running track where training sessions can be held.
On balance, I think we're actually going to be far worse off in the future in terms of playing space than we were before the Olympics were decided to be located here. Certainly we're going to be way worse off than the situation we enjoyed in the 1960s. And of course with a borough which is a rapidly growing population, and where you'd think there's greater call for sports facilities.
It's a funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old Olympic game.
I actually lived on this sports ground. My father came here in 1959 to become the resident groundsman, and was here for many years. And so I lived here until the early 1970s. It's a disclaimer from SCORE saying that they're not responsible for loss or damage of personal possessions. Interesting thing though, bottom right hand corner, it claims that SCORE is working for a healthy community. I don't think that this ground is working at the minute, and it's certainly not a very healthy sports ground.
It's a funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old Olympic game.
It's a terrible, embarrassing waste of an asset on the part of the authorities. The gates have been padlocked and the community users have been actually kept out when all the schools and all the main clubs and the football clubs, etc., and individuals could have actually had access to a prime community sports resource, which is only 500 metres away from the centre of the hub of the 2012 London Olympic Games. I'm Patrick Smith. Until the May 2010 elections, I was the spokesperson for the Lib Dem group on the council for the London Olympic 2012. I was one of the coaches that used to help train the young people at the Ive Farm each week. Ive Farm was firmly dedicated to sport in the community. It should still be able to do that. There should have been investment in it. It's investment in young people, it's investment in youth clubs, it's investment in youth club organisation, it's investment in sport, and none of it's happened so far today.
The SCORE project is something that was a terrific vision.
Its headquarters was based at the Leighton Orient Football Club.
Sports Club Orient regeneration.
They've put a bias on football, which has really been to the detriment of sport in the community generally.
It consists of a very large AstroTurf, which is incredibly well used, a large covered area, which houses 5 full-size courts, so it's almost like five sports halls side by side. Unfortunately, because it's just the canvas cover, we have terrific problems of heat and cold. So it gets very cold in winter, very hot in the summer. And then the other arm of that was this ground, Ive Farm Sports Ground, which played a big part in the initial bid. My father looked after this. He used to have an assistant, because it was once it had been extended to embrace those allotments over there. It was a huge ground. And of course there were the pitches outside the ground as well, the plateau pitches. But it was a very, very time-consuming job. Well, we're standing in the middle of the home straight of the running track. This is what's called a cinder track. you can see it's loose material which is compacted, so it has to be rolled to compact it. This was the sort of tracks you got back in the 50s and 60s. I mean, we're 20, 30 years before tartan tracks became the thing for athletics. They hadn't been invented. And they took an awful lot of maintenance. So my father would spend hour upon hour upon hour with his tractor, dragging it level and then rolling it to compact it, and then obviously marking it. I remember this area where we are now as the school's district school's football pitch. So we would be playing other boroughs from around the country on this what was called the arena. Doesn't look like it now, does it? But this with a little bit of investment could still be an invaluable facility for people in the southern part of Waltham Forest, and a ground also that, you know, if as the crow flies, I'd say it's no more than 600 yards from the Olympic site. What a pity for it to be as desolate as this. My father is 87. He'll be 88 in a couple of months' time. I think it would break his heart to see what the state this place is now. I wouldn't like him to see it. He would be most upset. I don't think it's something I would like to subject him to. I think it's best for him to have his memories of what the ground was like when he was keeping it in good condition. No, it would be very upsetting for him. Eventually we'll have no sports facilities. The only other sports ground in Leighton is Leighton County Grounds. Now, of course, in terms of sports grounds, it's not a huge ground. You go to other boroughs and there are huge playing fields. It's 2 football pitches and a cricket wicket. But even that was under threat recently because there had been a plan to build a new school on part of the Leighton County Ground site. So even there, it has been and may still in the future be under threat, certainly being reduced in size and a small sports ground becoming even smaller. The Waltham Forest Pool and Track, that itself has been under a cloud for the last 4 or 5 years. The existence of that facility is also threatened. The justification that's always made by the people who make these decisions is that it's on cost grounds. I mean, the one argument I've always found very, very hard to take is that when we have a reduction in the space of a sports ground, for instance, Salisbury Hall down at the Crooked Billet, which used to be a huge sports ground, which now houses Sainsbury's and one of the large chain of hotels or motels. We need the money from selling off half the ground in order to refurbish the remainder of the ground. Well, you do that enough times, of course, there's no ground left. And I know this is a justification made many times, and I've got the greatest of sympathy with people who have to make these financial decisions. But I think that grounds or large areas of ground are being lost too easily, too readily. I'm sure that you know, the sports lobby should have a greater say in what goes on with sports grounds. But it's not just the amount of, but the cost, because now the Sports Federation has to pay for the use of all the football pitches, hockey pitches. Football is the big cost, and it's almost bankrupting the Sports Federation. Now, when I was at school in the area, and when I started teaching in the area, the schools didn't pay for the hire of the pitches. The Federation didn't pay. The pitches were provided by the borough, and schools went, played, and no cost. Now that cost has been passed on, and as I say, it's put the School Sports Federation in Waltham Forest into serious problems. So much so, it's been mooted. There'll have to be a cut in the provision of schools football. Very strongly resisted, rightly so.
And I would add a word about the recent London riots. I mean, a lot of people have pointed the finger at disenfranchised youth, and although they've committed mindless criminality in a lot of cases, not all of them have done. Some of them have been reluctant, and instead of, you know, being in gangs on Tuesday nights, we would like to see them turning up at Ive Farm.
Most Olympic Games have not made a profit. They've either been heavily subsidised, like the Athens Games being subsidised by the European community in general, or they've made a massive loss. It's only a couple of years since Montreal finished paying for the Olympics held there, back in, the 70s, I think.
What a load of bunkers, what a load of balls, what an Olympisstake, what a shame. It's a funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old Olympic game.
As far as local people are concerned, the legacy that we'll get is the replacement of our free-to-use sports facilities by manicured parks and pay-to-use sports facilities that are actually way above the entry level that local schools and local people, particularly children, actually have a need of. So I don't see that we're gaining anything.
So if you're wanting answers, seek out the IOC. Find them in a 5-star suite in gilded luxury. And ask the glory hunters why the rest of us should pay for the stadia. We'll never get a seat in any way. 5 more rings before we start to say.
I don't think there was any sense really that the promises that were being made to local people were actually likely to be fulfilled or even had to be fulfilled. They had to be made. You had to make that promise of regeneration and a legacy, but you didn't actually have to fulfill it. You just had to put the games on, and this would somehow follow.
What a load of bunkers, what a load of balls, what an Olympisstake, what a shame. It's a funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old Olympic game. It's a funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old, funny old Olympic game.
I think it was a massive, massive enterprise with not enough time, and really people not being able to stick to the vision. They're being swept away by financial constraints, businesses stepping in, and of course business will trample over everything.